The Irreverent Nerds are back, baby. Today we'll be talking about the film Black Adam. Stay tuned for more. Coming up. I'm Richard.
And I'm Will.
And together we're
The Irreverent Nerds. Bum, bum, bum.
Hello, my fellow nerds. Welcome back to the Irreverent Nerds podcast. I'm your creator and your host, Richard Best. My good friend Will Boyer, the other half of the Irreverent Nerds dynamic duo, is unable to be here this evening. Now, he was able to be here this afternoon. We did actually record an episode, a review of Black Adam, which we went to go see together last night, along with Will's wife, Mandy. But unfortunately, the recording that we made earlier today was lost to the technological ether. So, Will being otherwise indisposed, it's just me tonight. Because I wanted to follow through with what I said. I said I was going to drop an episode today, and so it shall be. So you guys just get me. I'm not that bad. You know, it's a little more fun when there's someone else talking, but hopefully you'll still have a good time. So anyway, welcome back. It's been a bit. It's been a few weeks, at least, maybe 2 months. I have to check the date. It's been a bit since we've released an episode. That is primarily because there's been some crazy stuff going on in my life over the last couple of months. A lot of personal things, professional things, and it's just been a really stressful time, and I needed a break, to be honest with you. But now I'm back, and Will, of course, is still with me, and he will, like I said, he did record with me earlier today, and he will be with me next week. We're going back to our weekly schedule. I know we did bi-weekly, we talked about doing monthly, and we're like, you know what, I think weekly seems to work the best with most podcasts, and that seems to help us with consistency as well of content and just cranking something out every week. And honestly, we enjoy it. You know, it's a point of connection for Will and I every week. And even if this never takes off, he and I are just having fun, you know, and we're learning about how to make podcasts, honestly, which is a very valuable skill nowadays, believe it or not. Podcasts are a growing market. That's not really why I got into this with Will in the first place. Like, honestly, it was just connecting as friends and having fun. But yeah, there's potential out there, you know, and I'm always looking for, but like, it's helpful to have second or third streams of income, you know, it's particularly the way the economy is right now with everything going on in the world, inflation rising, you know, that's the kind of stuff's useful. But you're not here to listen to me talk about money. You know, I could do another podcast about podcasting. That's not what this is about. You're here to hear about Black Adam. So thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for joining me to talk about this DC Comics film just released a few short days ago. So, according to IMDb, if I could talk, it would help, wouldn't it? According to imdb.com, a synopsis of Black Adam. Nearly 5,000 years after he was bestowed with the almighty powers of the Egyptian gods and imprisoned just as quickly, Black Adam is freed from his earthly tomb, ready to unleash his unique form of justice on the modern world. This film was directed by, and I'll probably butcher this name, Jaume Collet-Serra. He is from Spain, I believe. It's written by Adam Stikiel, Roy Haynes, and Sohrab Noshirvani. Stars Dwayne Johnson, Aldous Hodge, and Pierce Brosnan, among others, such as Sarah Shahi, Marwan Kanzari, Mohammed Amer, and more. So, obviously, the title character is played by the one and only Dwayne Johnson, i.e. Black Adam, or throughout much of the film, as he is known, Teth Adam. Hawkman is played by Aldous Hodge. Dr. Fate, played by Pierce Brosnan. And there's some other characters that I'm not going to say too much about, because I'm trying to make this as spoiler-free as possible up front. So for those of you who have tried your best not to be spoiled at all, I hope you'll be surprised. So, what's this movie about? So, it starts off in the province of Kandak, which, as far as I know, is fictional. Honestly, in the film, it reminded me, and you know how DC and Marvel, as competitors, are often trying to copy one another. I couldn't help but feel that this was like a Middle Eastern version of Wakanda. It's this ancient kingdom that's been around a long time. They have this special mineral. In this case, it's called Eternium. Uh, you know, you have Eternium in Kondak. You have Vibranium in Wakanda. They both have magical properties. I mean, scientific, but quote unquote magical properties that are harnessed. Obviously, Wakanda has harnessed it and continued to use it in a much more effective way than Kondak has, at least in this film. Only a few people in Kondak, it seems, still know how to use the thing, how to use Eternium, and still know how to mine it. It doesn't seem to be benefiting. And in fact, they have actually been, in a sense, colonized by, I couldn't tell if it was a corporation or just some kind of outside force that colonized Kondak in order to, at least this wasn't entirely clear, to be honest, but I think it was in order to mine Eternium, but I could be wrong about that. But basically, this is somewhere in the Middle East, kind of a nondescript Middle Eastern, ancient Middle Eastern civilization, obviously fictional, Kondak, but as far as I know, might have some roots in ancient mythology or in real places, but as far as I know, this is a fictional, just like Wakanda is, it's a fictional place. But in this case, they're being oppressed. They have been colonized by another group, but there are insurgents. There are, I guess, in a sense, revolutionaries that you get introduced to pretty early on in the film, who are trying to bring freedom to Kondak, to bring independence from this outside force, and they are trying to get a hold of. It's not clearly explained why, to be honest, but they are trying to get a hold of this ancient crown that supposedly gave the wearer the powers of hell. Like, he could unleash, like, literally the powers of the dead, the powers of hell. And for some reason, these revolutionaries are trying to find it so they can hide it. They don't really explain whether anyone else has been looking for it. This part of the movie was unclear. But the general assumption is that someone either could find it or is actively looking for it, who is up to no good. And these revolutionaries who care about Kondak are trying to relocate it. Now they are ambushed. They're inside of this cave, this ancient cave, which they just waltz into, by the way. It's like no digging required. Like, there just happens to be an entrance into this big cave. It's like, wait, no one's ever found this before? Really? That was a little unbelievable. Honestly, maybe the first third of the movie was in my opinion was poorly written. It's kind of clunky, like how you get from point A to point B. Not a big fan of the first part of the movie, but it establishes things well enough that you have a good idea of what's going on, I think. So they're trying to move this crown, and they get attacked both from within and without. You find out they have an internal traitor who has been working with this other group, and try not to spoil it, but basically, like, he betrays them. Basically, the female archaeologist and her brother, which, let me get the characters' names here so I say this correctly. So you have Adriana Tomaz and Karim they are betrayed by Ishmael, who kills Samir, who was also with them. Like, he kills Samir, and then he betrays Adriana and Karim, who do manage to escape with their lives and with the crown, actually, because while they're in the cave, Adriana realizes, because she can read the ancient language, she realizes that the tomb of the champion, i.e., who we soon find out will be Teth Adam, or later to be called Black Adam, but at this point, Teth Adam, the champion's tomb. And she, at a moment of duress, when she's about to be captured, possibly shot, she reads the inscription and reads the word Shazam. Sound familiar? So that opens up the tomb, and Black Adam appears and subsequently kills everyone except for Adriana and Karim And at first you think he might have also killed Ishmael, but Ishmael manages to survive, which we will find out subsequently. But yeah, Black Adam kills everybody. He's very violent, and yeah, just lots of violence, lots of death, lots of people being fried alive by his lightning bolts, I guess. He can shoot electricity out of his hands or channel it through his body, which is a pretty amazing feat, I guess. But he also is super strong and very fast. He can fly horizontally while standing, like, very quickly. Like, he's about as fast as the Flash in terms of, like, point A to point B, short distances. You know, he's like, he's here and then he's gone. He's here and then he's gone. So the initial fight is pretty intense right off the bat. But he does get wounded. He gets wounded because one of the assailants, one of the soldiers, has an Eternium weapon, and apparently a weapon containing Eternium can wound Black Adam, or, as I said, at this point, Teth Adam. So Teth Adam gets wounded and is unconscious. So then Adriana and Karim take him back to Adriana's apartment. I don't know if they share the apartment. Anyway, back to their home. And they're brother and sister, by the way. Nothing weird there. But they they take him back. And he eventually wakes up and is trying to figure out where the fuck he is, when the fuck he is. Excuse my French. But, like, you know, he's slowly learning, slowly remembering his previous life and how he got to where he is now. And so he gets to know Adriana's son Amon, who is very much like the young character Hurut that we see in a flashback scene, you know, in Kahndaq back in 2600 BC, when Black Adam first is created. You know, Hurut becomes Black Adam, which is described only as a miracle. We find out, you know, shortly after that, he is chosen to be, I guess, the Shazam? I don't know what the right term is. But he is chosen by the Wizards, whom we have previously seen, at least one of whom we have previously seen in the movie Shazam, which came out a few years ago. Shazam 2 is coming out, by the way, which we saw the trailer for at the beginning of this film. So looking forward to that. The first one was a lot more enjoyable than I thought it would be, to be honest with you. And looking forward to the next installment. Wondering whether Black Adam is going to make an appearance, and perhaps other important personages, which I will discuss later. So, thus far, this has been spoiler-free. I've just described, you know, kind of the opening third or so of the film. Like, you have the intro to Black Adam, and he gets to know our main human protagonists. And then, and this is a little bit of a spoiler if you haven't kept up with much, like, I didn't know this group of... I think I had heard Pierce Brosnan was going to be in the film as Dr. Fate, but I had not really heard about any of these other characters being in the film. So this caught me by surprise, because I had not been following it super closely. And those of you who have, I'm sure you already knew this was coming before you saw the film, but those of you who have not been keeping up with it, this will be a little bit of a spoiler. So the Justice Society makes an appearance. So we cut to, and I wasn't sure who he was at first. We subsequently find out that it is Hawkman, but Aldous Hodge, the actor, you know, plays Hawkman, and we cut to him talking with Amanda Waller, who is from both Suicide Squad movies. She is a nasty piece of work who will do whatever, literally whatever she needs to do to protect American interests, more or less. And to some degree, at least as she sees it, to protect the interests of the world at large. Which is somewhat imperialistic, which that is a theme that does get dealt with in this movie. The idea of American imperialism and us, you know, charging in to rescue, quote unquote, other people groups from the bad guys that exist in their own country, and just how sometimes the country just wants us to leave them alone and let them fight their own battles. But that's handled reasonably well. Like, that point is made very strongly, but not in a way that diminishes the genuine care and concern that the Justice Society does have for people. And you see that, like Hawkman, Atom Smasher, Dr. Fate, and Cyclone do genuinely care, and want to help people. That much is clear. Misguided though some of those attempts may be, but they do eventually. Again, this is somewhat of a spoiler. Like initially, they are in conflict with Black Adam, and they have been instructed by Amanda Waller to essentially abduct him, to imprison him, so that they can, because they're afraid of what he can do. They know some of the damage that is left a bit mysterious on purpose, to be revealed later in the film. And that is one of the things I did really enjoy about this film, was the mystery that you eventually, initially you're not, there's a little bit of it initially, but it actually gets more mysterious as you get further into the film, like the origins of Black Adam, or Teth Adam, again, as he's known throughout much of the film. His origins and his origin story, and more is revealed as you go on, until finally, I think with about 20 or 30 minutes left in the film. And by the way, this is definitely a spoiler, so if you don't want to know this before going into the film, you might want to stop now. But the big reveal, and I'm jumping a bit ahead to be sure, but the big reveal at the end is that he is not actually Harut, who for much of the film we believe him to be Harut, the young man who stood up to the imperialistic powers of his day, or at least to the enslavers of his day. And sorry about the background noise, by the way. We believe that it's him, and then we find out with about 20-30 minutes left in the movie that it was actually his father. Harut did become, I don't know if he was known as Black Adam at the time, but he did become the champion and fought for his people. But then in an effort to protect his father, he bestowed the powers on his father. I guess if you say Shazam while touching someone else, you can transfer the powers to them. And sadly, right after he transfers it, he is then shot by the enemy and killed. And his father obviously grieves deeply. And we find out over time that the reasons he goes to face the king, the one who was trying to make this evil crown so that he could get in touch with the powers of hell, essentially. He goes to wreak vengeance on this king. Initially, we're like, maybe he came to be the hero, the champion, but we find out over time that no, he was just angry because of the death of his son, understandably so, and basically wiped out everybody in the palace. And subsequently, somehow, some power that was back then managed to imprison him. So he wasn't actually in a tomb; he was imprisoned because he had done so much damage, in wreaking vengeance and havoc upon the palace. And so essentially for the film, he is an anti-hero. You see some concern for other people, and obviously he had that for his son, and you get hints that he feels a bit of that for Ammon, over time. He does respond to Adriana's plea to go and save Ammon. And so over time, he becomes a little bit more of a hero, but you're never, kind of in the vein of Vin Diesel as in the film Pitch Black, and he's very much an anti-hero. He does have a soft spot for kids and things, and when the chips are down, he will fight against the really bad guys, but he's pretty nasty himself, and does so with great violence. So definitely an anti-hero. And apparently there was a shift at one point. I was reading about this early on Wikipedia. There was a shift at one point in the comics history, because he was a villain, just a straight up villain for much of comic book history. And then there was a shift, I think either in the 90s or the 2000s towards, well, I guess it was more the 2000s. He began to shift with some of the writing of Jeff Johns and the shift towards becoming more of an anti-hero. And eventually in one storyline became a part of the Justice League. And here he kind of becomes an honorary member, at least for a time, of the Justice Society. But at the end, he stays with Kahndaq and decides to become their champion. And by the way, here's another spoiler. So Ishmael, and you find this out gradually throughout the course of the film, the story reveals, the reveals of characters and secrets, those are handled pretty well throughout the course of the film. Like I said, the beginning was a little clunky, the writing was a little clunky, the pacing a bit clunky. But as the film goes on, it gets better and it gets more interesting, in my opinion. And Ishmael, you eventually find out, is a direct descendant of the king who was killed by Black Adam, roughly 5,000 years ago. And the knowledge of the crown and how to use the crown to unleash the powers of hell and reign over Kondak has been passed down to him. And he eventually succeeds in becoming I'm not really sure what else to call it. Like he's like Kondak Satan or Kondak Shaitan, as Will and I were joking earlier. He basically looks like a cross between. Well, I mean, what is Hellboy? So anyway, Black Adam, fights Satan in the ultimate scene. After the Justice Society has already fought him, and again, spoiler alert: Dr. Fate meets his fate by choice to some extent. He saw that Hawkman was going to get killed. At least, by the way, Dr. Fate can see the future. He's essentially, which Doctor Strange probably came after Dr. Fate, most likely, although I'm not sure. DC is older than Marvel, so that's a very good possibility. And again, they tend to compete with one another and copy one another. So Dr. Fate is like an analog to Doctor Strange, or vice versa. Very similar powers. But in one of his visions, he saw that Hawkman was going to be killed, so he finds a way to alter that so that he instead is the one who dies, and Hawkman ends up surviving. But then, of course, he also releases Black Adam, from who at that point was in Amanda Waller's prison, voluntarily, by the way. But then Dr. Fate releases him, and he comes back to fight Ishmael, who I forget what his name was supposed to be when he becomes the big baddie at the end. But anyway, Ishmael, aka Kondak Shaitan, I'm just going to call him Kondak Shaitan, fights Teth Adam still at that point, and loses, epically, loses. And then Teth Adam, you think, for a moment, you're like, maybe he will sit on the throne and reign over Kondak, but then he decides, nope, not going to do that. They can reign over themselves. I will just be their protector. And he decides to stay. Now, that's essentially the film in a nutshell. Now, I'm gonna tell you about the cutscene right now. So if up to this point you haven't really cared to be spoiled, but you do want to be surprised by the cutscene, definitely turn it off now. So the cutscene, there's only one, by the way. There's not one at the end. Those of you who do listen to this all the way because you want to know everything, because I know some of you do. You want to know everything. There's no cutscene to the end, so don't bother to stay. At least there wasn't in our showing. Like, if they put one in someone else's showing, I'd be really pissed. But the one cutscene that happens kind of a third of the way through the credits, Black Adam is there in the ruins of the old palace, and Amanda Waller sends this like robot in that pops up a hologram of her face, and she's able to speak directly to Black Adam. And basically threatens him like, "Hey, you stay in Kondak. If I hear you've basically put one foot outside of it or interfered anywhere else, I will send down the rain." And he's like, "No one on Earth can beat me because I'm Dwayne Johnson." No. And she's like, "Well, I can call in some people who are not from Earth." Cue the big reveal. Superman shows up. Yes, Henry Cavill as Superman shows up. And he's like, "Hey, man, we need to talk." And that's how it ends. And Black Adam smirks. He's like, it's kind of like, "All right, come at me." And apparently, according to my good buddy Will, who has kept up with this a little bit, Dwayne Johnson has been itching for Black Adam and Superman to fight at some point in the later film. So this may lead up to that. So it's like a hint of things to come. Don't know if both characters are going to be in the upcoming Shazam movie, or if they're going to meet in the next Black Adam movie or something, or the next Superman movie. I mean, who's to say? And obviously DC wants us to wonder, so that we'll come and see all of those movies, which I plan to do anyway, just because I love DC Comics. I don't think their live action movies are as good as Marvel's. Generally speaking, they're DC. They own the animated world. I will definitely say the animated films of DC are excellent. Movies are kind of hit or miss, or always have been, sadly. Although the Batman that recently came out was outstanding, in my opinion, the best Batman film ever made. Now, it definitely built on things that other Batman films have done. Obviously, Christopher Nolan's films laid a lot of the groundwork. So, Anyway, that wraps up today's episode. So that's my. Well, you know what? Hold on. I got a few more things to say, and then I'll wrap it up and say goodbye for this week. So I'll come right back. All right. So, what would I rate this film? Probably should have said that at the beginning when I was doing my general overview. My initial gut reaction was 3 out of 5 stars. Like if you have a 5-star rating system, 3 out of 5. I think I'm going to bump that up just a little bit. I'm going to say 3.5 out of 5. Because it did get really interesting towards the end, you know. Particularly if I was going to say 5 stars within the DC multiverse, if you will, the DCE universe of films. I think 3.5 is a pretty fair rating for it. Obviously, Christopher Nolan's films are up there in the 4 range, and The Batman is like 4.75. The thing's damn near perfect, in my opinion, as a Batman movie, as a DC movie. So that is now the new benchmark, and this doesn't come even close to that level of excellence. Not even close. But it's still enjoyable, and as I said, it got better as time went on. There was character development, there was mystery, there were reveals, obviously big action scenes, and it was with characters that you don't hear about a whole lot. So that was interesting to me. So I think I'd give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars, particularly within the DC multiverse. Maybe not in the broader pantheon of great films. It probably would rate more like a 3 in that realm. But within the DC universe, I would say 3.5 out of 5. So, Black Adam. Go see it if you haven't already. If you really enjoy it, go see it again. Support DC Comics movies. So we want them to keep coming, and we want them to get better. You know, and if they make enough money, hopefully, Warner Brothers will, you know, eventually get them right, which they have on some of, like the Joker was excellent. The Batman was also excellent. You know, so it's hit or miss with DC, and you know, unfortunately, wish they were all knocking it out of the park. But that, that's true of Marvel too. Like there's some clunkers, honestly, in the Marvel EC, but it's just the universe just builds and builds and builds, and it starts to interconnect. And DC is beginning to do that. They're not doing as good a job as Marvel. They're trying to copy Marvel in this instance, but they're getting there. They're getting there. You know, I'm hoping they let Zack Snyder do some more work. I actually thoroughly enjoyed the Zack Snyder cut of the Justice League. Need to go back and watch it again, by the way. And it is 4 hours long, but it's basically like a mini series. You know, which a lot of streaming services are now doing these like 6-episode mini series that are, you know, it's essentially like an epic 3-part movie. You know, done with the same production level as a movie, which I'm thoroughly enjoying. So I had no issues with having a 4-hour, essentially a 4-hour mini series about the Justice League. I thought that was awesome. So much better than the theatrical version. Check that out if you haven't seen it, by the way. Anyway, also in this universe, if you haven't seen Shazam yet, the first one, check that out. You know, before you see Black Adam, I would recommend that. There are some connections. And I'm assuming there are going to be more, as Shazam 2 is coming out soon. So, my fellow nerds, thank you for listening. And next week, my co-host Will Boyer will be back with me. We're not sure yet what we're going to be talking about. We're kind of just ramping things back up. We'll be trying to get guests coming in again. And we're looking forward to continuing on with the Irreverent Nerds. So, thank you, my nerds. Peace. Live long. Prosper. I'm Batman. Okay, that was bad. See you later. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Irreverent Nerds podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at irreverent_nerds, plural. We are on Facebook. Our fan page is simply called The Irreverent Nerds. We're on YouTube, The Irreverent Nerd. And if you go to anchor.fm/Irreverent Nerd, you can support us for 99 cents a month, $4.99 a month, or $9.99 a month. You can also send us a voice message, which we may include in a future episode. Fellow nerds, until next time, make it so. Engage. Avengers assemble. I'm Batman.